Hello, I'm Sophie Ikenya. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. No sign of Lesotho's Prime Minister, Thomas Thabane, was to be charged with the murder of his estranged wife, but failed to appear in court.
We arranged with his lawyer that he'll be here at 8 o'clock, but now he's not here. We are going to find out the reasons why.
I'm Pumza Fihlani in Johannesburg. Where is Mr. Thabane? Well, unexpectedly here in South Africa for a medical checkup. But his family says he is not fleeing from justice.
South Sudan's two sides prepare to form a new unity government with just hours until Saturday's deadline. We'll have the latest from Juba. After months of tension between the two countries, a thawing of relations between Rwanda and Ugandan leaders. Also in the program, we speak to one of the stars of Black Panther. As his new film, Queen and Slim, is released, Daniel Kaluuya tells us how Hollywood is increasingly pitching movies for African audiences.
This is an untapped market that we haven't really engaged with, and untapped narratives and untapped perspectives.
And in sports, Frank Lampard meets his old mentor this weekend as Chelsea host Tottenham Hotspur at Stamford Bridge in the English Premier League. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. He was meant to appear in court today, where he was expected to be charged with murdering his estranged wife, but instead Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Thabane failed to show up. As everyone in the courtroom in the capital Maseru waited, Lesotho's police said they'd been informed that Mr. Thabane had chosen instead to attend what was described as a long-standing medical appointment in neighboring South Africa. Well, let's bring in the BBC's Pumza Fihlani, who's been following this story for us. Take us through what happened today, Pumza.
There was heavy police presence outside the Maseru Magistrates Court, where Prime Minister Thabane was scheduled to appear this morning. But he didn't show and nobody knew where he was. The police were confused, as the Deputy Police Commissioner explains.
We arranged with his lawyer that he'll be here at 8 o'clock, but now he's not here. We are going to find out the reasons why. Because when I spoke to his lawyer a few minutes ago, he was clueless as to the whereabouts of the Prime Minister.
After numerous calls between the police and Mr. Thabane's lawyers, there was some semblance of clarity, and this afternoon a press conference by the police. Let's have a listen.
As soon as it has been ascertained that indeed he is in South Africa for medical checkup, as it is alleged, well, we shall wait until such a time when she's feeling okay. And the arrangement will, of course, be made that he will appear before the court of law and be formally charged.
So, Pumza, that's what's been happening in Lesotho today. But the Prime Minister on Thursday said he would resign in July. I wonder what's happening politically right now in the country.
That's right, Sophie. He has indicated that he wants to resign, but only wants to do this in July. But in the meantime, this has created somewhat of a political crisis. We know that there is behind-the-scenes wrangling by some people from his coalition government who want him out sooner rather than later. They don't want the country to be plunged into uncertainty when he eventually gets charged for the murder of his ex-wife.
So the question that a lot of people are asking is, why not now? Why July? What's happening in between now and that time that he said he would resign?
Also, if it's important to say that, firstly, the Prime Minister has said nothing about the controversy or the murder charges. So what he has said is he wants to step down because of his old age. He says he wants to spend time with his family. And the reason he's given then for this deadline for July is he's saying he wants to ensure that the right person is put in that job. He wants to give his party time to try and find the right candidate. But on the sidelines of that, we know that people within his party are becoming increasingly impatient with him.
What is South Africa making of all these? Because he is there now.
He certainly is. And you'll know that South Africa always prides itself in being a country that respects the rule of law. So we expect very much for the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, who does enjoy a close relationship with the Prime Minister, to be trying to persuade him to return to Lesotho to face those charges, or rather find that this matter is resolved. South Africa will not want to be seen as a country that is interfering in the rule of law.
All right. Pumza Fihlani for us there in Johannesburg. Thank you. It's taken a long time to get here, but on Saturday, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and opposition rebel leader Riek Machar are set to form a unity government. It's a move which should bring together the opposing sides and will be a significant step in ending more than 5 years of civil war. Our reporter Catherine Biaruhanga is in Juba, where leaders are arriving ahead of the ceremony and formation of the new cabinet tomorrow.
There's a lot of expectation for South Sudan's new unity government. It's all people are talking about here in Juba. President Salva Kiir and his longtime rival Riek Machar have agreed to work together in a new unity government after 5 years of brutal civil war. They'll be joined by smaller opposition parties. Preparations are already underway and security has been stepped up. Leaders from neighboring countries like Sudan, Ethiopia and Uganda should be here to witness this moment. But there's also apprehension. Can these two men who have failed to work together before and after South Sudan's independence actually do so this time? A previous unity government was formed in 2016, but it broke down after Kiir and Machar's forces turned on each other here in Juba. There'll be questions about how they're going to share key ministries like finance, petroleum, justice, and defense. This is the world's youngest nation, which so many people rooted for in its fight for independence. But now the leaders accused of tearing it apart through violence and corruption are the ones promising a better future.
Catherine Biaruhanga reporting there. Let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. A Nigerian high court in the northern city of Kaduna has acquitted 100 members of the outlawed Islamic movement in Nigeria. The group were among those arrested during a military crackdown in 2015. They'd been accused of attempting to assassinate Nigeria's army chief. Voters in Togo will head to the polls on Saturday to choose their next president. Incumbent for Nyasingbe of the ruling Union for the Republic is running for a fourth term. His family has governed the country for over half a century. He'll face 6 rivals, including longtime opposition leader Jean-Pierre Fabre of the National Alliance for Change. Provisional results are expected 6 days after polls close. Now, Algerians have taken to the streets ahead of the 1-year anniversary of the protest movement known as Hirak. It was sparked by the then President Abdelaziz Bouteflika's insistence on running for a 5th term. He resigned last April. On Thursday night, current President Abdelmadjid Tebboune praised the protests for avoiding violence. Now, it's fair to say the two men behind me haven't exactly seen eye to eye recently. Relations between Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni and Rwanda's President Paul Kagame have been frosty since a main crossing between the two countries was shut down last year. But today, a gradual thawing of relations between the two has led to a meeting at the very spot in the Rwandan border town of Katuna to map a way forward. With me now in studio is Prudon Sengiyumva from the BBC Great Lakes Service. He's been following the story. Prudon, today there was a handshake between these two gentlemen. They look quite happy here. But what was agreed exactly?
Indeed, Sophie. I mean, they look very happy, but it's very surprising because a couple of months ago they were exchanging insults. But today, the most important part of the agreement was actually the extradition treaty that they signed. So, for a very long time, Rwanda has accused Uganda directly and its authorities of harboring what Rwanda sees as a motive to hide people who wanted to destabilize Rwanda. And Uganda in return has accused Rwanda of sending spies to come to Uganda to destabilize the country. So it's been accusations and counter-accusations, and of course both leaders have not seen eye to eye for a very long time. So today was a very, very important handshake, but of course it needs to be seen whether they will follow up this handshake with the concrete actions, because another thing that they signed today was reopening a border that has been closed for a very long time. It hasn't been opened today. They said they will be able to open it in 45 days, and something that suggests there's still a lot of work to be done.
There's a lot of work to be done. The two leaders were at each other's sides when they were, clamoring for power. Where did the rain start hitting beating them, so to speak?
Sophie, it's just that saying of like there's nothing that lasts in politics, because as you say, Paul Kagame himself, president of Rwanda, was involved in helping President Museveni to take power in the 80s. And Museveni also helped Paul Kagame, who was leading the RPF, to take power in Rwanda in 1994. But the issues started when when Paul Kagame fell out with some of the former generals. They fled to Uganda because some of them, of course, grew up in Uganda as well, in the same place as Paul Kagame himself. So they fell out. So they went to Uganda. Some others went to South Africa. Mm-hmm. So he was President Paul Kagame accusing Museveni of helping those to come to destabilize Rwanda.
Very, very interesting. Is it surprising, though, that the people who mediated this meeting was the DRC president and the Angolan president? Why not, leaders from the East African community, given they are members of the East African community?
It is, unfortunately, it's not as surprising for some people, especially in the region, because although we are talking about Rwanda having issues with Uganda, but also there's another issue with Rwanda and Burundi at the same time. President of Burundi, Pierre Nkurunziza, has openly accused Rwanda of being the enemy number one of his country. So there is an open tension between two countries, and those two countries are also part of East African community. So it's very unfortunate that this issue couldn't be resolved by one member state of the East African community. But of course, people who follow closely the politics of that region, they know even the leaders of those countries, they don't necessarily have good relations in terms of how they can address issues, because some other leaders who would have helped also have issues in their own countries.
Now, you mentioned that the border will be opened in about 45 days. What was the impact of the closure on regional trade?
Huge impact, not necessarily on trade, but also on a social and human level, because although it's a border, but it's not really a border in a real sense, because there are a lot of people on the Rwandan side who, for instance, had families in Uganda. They would go to do business during the day. They would come back to Rwanda at night, but they were stopped. They couldn't go there. But also families who there are a lot of intermarriages on the border. People could not do trade. Students who were registered in Ugandan schools could not go to school. So now there is a hope that maybe after this handshake, it could be followed up by, concrete actions to open the border, let the citizens of both countries trade and do business again.
Back to normality. All right, Prudence, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts indeed on this in this issue. Now, this is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come in sport, it's the big fight in Las Vegas. We catch up with Deontay Wilder ahead of this weekend and where he'd like to fight in the future. I'm Sophie Ikenya and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Thabane fails to appear in court to be charged with the murder of his estranged wife. His son says he's gone to South Africa for medical treatment. South Sudan's two sides are preparing to form a new unity government after more than 5 years of civil war. Now to Nigeria, which, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, has the poorest air quality on the continent. This is particularly a problem in Port Harcourt, where Kaluuya grew up grew up. She says her life and health has been blighted by the illegal refining of crude oil in the region, which has polluted the atmosphere with soot. Let's hear her story.
I was a healthy child, but when they started the suits, I realized I was waking up every morning and I was sneezing for like more than 10 or 20 times. This is what's happening in Port Harcourt, and you can't just leave your windows open for an hour. Even the fan is black and all covered with soot. The TV, they're all covered with soot.
Roads and houses in Port Harcourt, Nigeria are covered in soot caused by illegal refining of crude oil. Residents fear that their health could be compromised.
When I sneeze and I use a handkerchief or something, I'll see black traces of black soot or blood. The doctor said that yes, these soot can cause what I'm going through. So the doctor just said that it cannot be cured, except I have to move from this environment to somewhere that is soot-free. Anytime I go to sleep, I make sure I have to carry my inhaler, my drugs. Those ones are like my first go-to when the reaction starts. But if it gets serious, then I have to do steam inhalation where I use hot water to breathe in.
Soot is one of the deadliest forms of air pollution, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Nigeria has the poorest quality of air in Africa and is the 10th most polluted country in the world.
There was a river behind us, and we could just stroll down there, even in the evening, any time of the day, to get fish or something. But now you're going to the river bank and you're going to see oil on the soil. There are no fishes anymore.
Charles Mbolu, BBC News, Port Harcourt.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Time for sport. Mimi.
Thanks, Sophie. We start with football. The early English Premier League kickoff on Saturday sees Chelsea host Tottenham Hotspur. It will be one where Chelsea boss Frank Lampard will be meeting his old mentor, Jose Mourinho, at Stamford Bridge. Lampard is struggling to secure a top four finish with one win in 6 English Premier League games. Spurs on the back of their tail in the 5th position, but have now been hit with injury worries to their strikers. Staying with the English Premier League, Leicester City boss Brendan Rodgers has refused to put a time limit on Nigeria's Wilfred Ndidi's recovery from an injury he picked up last month. The midfielder will not take part in their home game against Manchester City on Saturday, having missed their last 2 matches. The 23-year-old has felt discomfort in the knee. He had surgery on in early January. Rodgers said he's still in the process to try and get fit, and you'll see how he gets on in the next week. Now, it's just a month to go before the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, but the Ivory Coast Football Federation have parted ways with their head coach Ibrahim Kamara by mutual consent. Kamara had been in his position since 2018, having previously been in charge of the Elephants, as the team are known, at various youth and home-based national teams. Just last summer, he led the Ivory Coast to the quarterfinals of the Africa Cup of Nations, which was held in Egypt. To boxing, just a day to go before the world title heavyweight rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in Las Vegas. It was just 15 months ago from their controversial draw that left boxing fans wanting more, and their press conference on Thursday got a little bit nasty as they faced off. Ahead of the big fight, the WBC champion spoke to BBC Africa's Mark Wilberforce and said that he hoped to one day fight in Africa.
So with that being said, could it be possible that we could see you stage a mega fight in Africa, similar to what Muhammad Ali and George Foreman did with Rumble in the Jungle back in 1974?
Africa is definitely one of the places, that I would love to do a fight over there. We definitely, I love the fact that Muhammad Ali had to fight in Africa, and the people, they embraced him with so much love. Boombaye, Ali, Boombaye, Ali, Boombaye, Ali. And I can only imagine just being the champion, and people chanting your name all over, following you all over the streets, the love that you will have, and even in the arena. Like, if it just for me, just to think about it, as I said in my head, like I can feel tingling, feeling like my hairs come up over my skin, just to even just be able to, like, dang, to witness that one day, and that one day could be possible. You know, it is possible, and I'm gonna do everything in my powers to make that become a reality for me, because I would love for that to happen.
We'll have to wait and see. Now to athletics. Ethiopia's Ababel Yeshane Berhane smashed the women's half marathon world record by 20 seconds to win the Ras Al Khaimah event in the United Arab Emirates. Berhane crossed the line in 1 hour, 4 minutes and 31 seconds on Friday to eclipse the previous record set by Kenyan Jocelyn Chepkosgei in 2017. Second place, Bridget Kosgei also broke Chepkosgei's record by 2 seconds. And to cricket, and the match between South Africa and Australia in the men's T20 is underway in Johannesburg. Meanwhile, South Africa women's team played their first match against England on Sunday in Australia for the women's T20 World Cup. That's all the sport. Sophie.
Thank you, Mimi. Now, he starred in the superhero blockbuster Black Panther and the horror film Get Out. Now, Daniel Kaluuya is back on our screens in the critically acclaimed Queen and Slim. It tells the story of a young black couple in America whose first date takes an unexpected turn when they are pulled over by a white police officer. The British Ugandan actor has been talking to the BBC's Princess Abumere in Lagos. She asked him what drew him to this film.
I think it will resonate with African audiences because it's just about modern day, because they meet on a Tinder app. It's about modern day dating. It's about the struggle with the status quo and with the establishments. But also there's a love story that in the middle of it, because when they go on a run, they hate each other. And there's just this you know, opposites attract. And when they throw away their phones, when they disconnect, they are more likely to connect.
Are you gonna ask me a question or not?
What took you so long to respond to me?
You've mentioned how the film starts off with a bad date. Can you tell me about the worst date you've been on?
I can't tell you about dates anymore because the girls contact me and I get in trouble.
Oh dear.
So I have to be PG. I've never been on a bad date.
Kaluuya has come a long way from starting his career as a runner on a shopping channel to getting big breaks in movies like Get Out and Marvel Studios' superhero film Black Panther.
Do you think we'll ever see more movies like that?
Yeah, 100%, because of how well it resonated and how, I mean, especially on the continent, how many people came out and supported it. I think the industry is just a reflection on the support that a film has. And if people went out and supported, then it creates a precedent. They say, oh, this is an untapped market that we haven't really engaged with, and untapped narratives and untapped perspectives. So I think it's going to start a train of a lot more narratives from that perspective.
Where we are.
Great.
What if they kill us?
Don't say that.
There's no guarantee they won't.
With stellar performances, awards, and recognition, Kaluuya is now firmly established in Hollywood. What would he want to say to other young, up-and-coming actors on the continent who may dream of following in his footsteps?
You should know yourself. I mean, it's hard to know yourself, but that should always be the goal. It's kind of know what you're about, know what you stand for. So then, in certain decisions, it's such a malleable industry. Certain decisions is just what you know, how much you know yourself is what keeps you on the right path. And make sure that you're not getting better at waiting for a phone call and actually getting better at your actual craft.
There's a scene in the movie where Kaluuya's character, Slim, says, "Everything is destined." With all his success, one might be tempted to say his life under the bright lights of Hollywood was written in the stars. But it's clear, hard work and dedication are part of his journey.
Are you trying to die?
No, I just always wanted to do that.
Well, don't.
Princess Abumere, BBC News, Lagos.
Don't forget, you can get in touch with me and some of the team on social media at Sikenya. Well, that's Focus on Africa for now. Thank you for your company. Bye.